Hey there, Gary Parrish. Welcome back to the CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting dodo birds and leaky black. Look at there, Chip Patterson's here with me. If you're watching on YouTube, you know what to do to that like button. Shouts to Brandon Davies. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube channel. Also, please do that while you're here. Let's get into it. Two teams have punched tickets to the 2025 Final Four in San Antonio. Congrats to Florida. Congrats to Duke. We are halfway home to possibly having just the second Final Four in history with all four number one seeds. We'll obviously discuss both games before we're out of here tonight, but I do want to start with the one that just ended. I want to start with the scene where Duke has advanced to the Final Four for the first time under John Shire. Final score, Duke 85, Alabama 65. Our buddy Matt Norlander believed, even publicly suggested, this could end up being the best game of the entire tournament. Turns out it was not. Cooper Flagg buried a three 19 seconds after tip-off, gave the Blue Devils a 3-0 lead, and they led every single second the rest of the way and won the game by 20. Chip Patterson, thanks for being here. Good to see your face. It wasn't the competitive game we wanted, but that was pretty impressive stuff from Duke, wasn't it?
Yeah, very impressive. I mean, it brings about there was an obvious assumption there would be regression, that you weren't going to go out, you weren't going to be able to attempt 51 threes against Duke's defense, that you weren't going to be able to hit 25 threes against Duke's defense. And so, like, there had to be some sort of, at the risk of being, too over the top here in the early minutes of this show, a refractory period, right? Like, I mean, there was just going to be like a little bit of a cooling off that Alabama's offense was going to have. But so much of this comes back to, I think that even we heard in the postgame from Nate Oates coming out of Friday night, like, the way that BYU was guarding Alabama allowed Alabama to be able to get all these shots off. And I think that you might have even said, and certainly I thought the same, was, well, there ain't no way Duke's going to be guarding Alabama in the same way, not to mention the same difference in length, athleticism, talent, and just overall efficiency, the way that this Duke defense has been operating all through the season. So, like, number one, for a Duke team that has been an offensive juggernaut, just like blowing teams out of the water basically since like mid-February, right? I mean, the ACC tournament, it looks almost like an anomaly just in terms of just the raw offensive scoring numbers. Well, everything else has just been like 80s, 90s, throwing up 100s. And you kind of forgot how good this team can be defensively. That is the story for me for Duke in this game, because there were empty possessions for Duke in this game, like some ball control issues. But the problem was Alabama was having the same turnovers and Alabama wasn't hitting the threes. And so 85-65, Duke puts up a big number again. But to me, I think it is more about the defensive side of the ball that stands out to me.
There's no question. The defense was the strongest point for Duke tonight, although they were strong in most areas. You're right. I did say that people got so caught up on Alabama making 25 3-pointers that I thought the even wilder number was the 51 attempts.
40 minutes.
In a 40-minute game. And I had just sort of made the point, like, they're not going to be able to forget making 25, because this is the typical TV stuff, radio stuff, I guess podcast stuff. People always want to know if something could be replicated. That's like the favorite thing for somebody to ask somebody else. Sure. Can they replicate that? What happens if they replicate that? Well, they're not going to. 25 of 51 is like historically unprecedented. Okay. So they were never going to replicate it. But that didn't mean I didn't think they couldn't shoot another good percentage, even perhaps go above 40% again. I just didn't think they were going to be able to get the shots off.
Right.
And that was clear in this game. They go from taking 51 in a 40-minute game against BYU. They only got 32 off in a 40-minute game against Duke. They were 8
some of
of
those
30.
are with like a double-digit spread, like not double-digit spread,
right.
double-digit margin, where it's like, okay, like it's a little bit softer, a little bit more conservative the whole way.
Right. And they go from shooting 49% from three against BYU to just 25% from three against Duke. So the attempts were down, the percentage is down. And I think that's got everything to do with Duke's length. And that's the other thing that we talked about in advance of this game. This to me was I didn't predict Duke was going to win by 20. If I thought it was certainty that Duke was just going to go blow them out, I would have figured out a way to put my 401k on it, and things would have been nice. But if you're sort of hypothesizing how something like this could happen, how it could really get away from them, it would be that the size, the length, particularly the length at the 1-2-3 was going to be an issue on the offensive end for Alabama, because Alabama is going to run out there 6'1" Mark Sears, 6'4" LeBaron Philon, 6'4" Chris Youngblood, and Duke's going to counter that with 6'6", 6'6", 6'7". Tyrese Proctor, Sion James, Concanipple. Well, you could even see it like clear as day on television. It is wildly different to be attempting a three-point shot when somebody 6'1" is running out to contest and somebody 6'7" is running out to contest. You got to release it a different place. It's a different trajectory. There was one shot, I think it was Youngblood took, but I just noticed he noticeably took like it was a higher shot.
A launch angle?
Yes, because it was the only way to get it over an outstretched arm of a 6'6" defender. And so that was an obvious potential place of stress for Duke, and it ended up being exactly that. And then, Knipple goes out and gets 20 points. Proctor got 17. Cooper Flagg was only 6 of 16 from the field, but he got 16. I think this is what you were hinting at earlier. Duke didn't even play what I would consider their A game necessarily.
13 turnovers. Like a little bit of bubble guts with the ball at times in the second half where I was like, are you going to let them climb back? But they just continually came up with stops, forcing turnovers, just imposing their will at the other end. Like and again, I don't want to get too into this because it is not my bag. But one of my greatest resources when I am a hired hand, to come help out during college basketball season, I try to make sure I'm as good as I can get. And I've got a lot of good resources on the scouting side, and the way that they tuned into the way that BYU defended Alabama's offense and what they did around ball screens. And then those same sources reacting to what Duke was doing. Again, I can't break it down the same way that I can how a robber man coverage might be able to work against a college football quarterback. But at the same time, I was like, okay, so clearly Duke, who is without Jay Lucas, right? Not supposed, but like your defensive leading assistant, your defensive coordinator, as they're starting to call him. And like, he's gone. He's off to Miami. He's working the portal right now. The rest of that staff for Jon Scheyer, obviously stepping up and being like, okay, what BYU did not work at all. Here's what our personnel is different, but also here's what we can do to approach this differently. I think it was high marks for them on that side as well.
Well, when you got that kind of length, you can sort of switch everything as well, 1 through 4, and Alabama 2 nights after scoring 113 in a 40-minute game against a team that was performing for the previous 6 weeks like a top 5 team in the country. BYU. I don't know if people understood that. I said it multiple times heading into the game, but I don't know that it was flashed on a graphic on television. But before Alabama did what it did to BYU was 11-1 and over the previous 6 weeks. And if you
only lost to Houston, right?
Only lost to Houston. And if you just go back to the day they started that 11-1 stretch and say, we're starting the season here. Now let's run all the numbers. BartTorvik.com. Tell me who the best teams in the country are for the past 6 weeks. Heading into the BYU-Alabama game, the top 4 teams in the country over the previous 6 weeks at BartTorvik.com were Duke, Houston, Florida, and BYU. Number 5 was Auburn. So I know it was just like, they beat a 6 seed. They beat a 6 seed that was playing like a 1 seed for the past 6 weeks. All right. They scored 113 points against them. I promise there's a point to this. Against Duke, they only got 65.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is outrageous. They nearly cut you in half. You played what was a team performing like a 1 seed 2 days ago and put 113 on them. You played another team performing like a 1 seed tonight, and you couldn't get to 66.
Hey, same rims. All right. It's not like the Devils went in there and had to play a hockey game and they had to get the basketball goals out of there. That's the same rims. That's the same floor. I mean, I know they pull the curtain up, right? I got my chance to get in the building in the first and second round, but they put the curtain up on Saturday, or Friday, but the same goal. All right. That's the same rims where they were lights out were not the same results. So
you know what? Yeah. Same goals, same arena, same court, same coaching staff, same players, different opponent.
Yeah,
that was the problem.
Yeah.
Different opponent became the problem.
All right. So back at you. Because Duke was the betting favorite to win the national championship on Selection Sunday, because they have handled their business as such, even here, has there been anything through 4 games that has moved you dramatically one way or the other as compared to Selection Sunday in terms of what you think Duke is capable of doing?
Oh no, I always thought Duke was capable of winning the national championship,
right.
And I'm still very certain that they're capable of winning the national championship. If I'm being completely honest, on Selection Sunday, when I feel my breath, because I'm not always completely honest.
I know.
Okay, but I'm going to try to be right now.
Right.
All right, I'm going to try to be right now.
Yeah.
If I'm being completely honest, on Selection Sunday, I went with Auburn as my national champion, just because that would provide me with an opportunity, not just because, but in part because it would provide me with an opportunity the day after the national championship game to say, I try to tell you, I know Auburn was struggling towards the end of the regular season, but I kept them number 1 and told you that was still the best team in the country. And you guys moved off of them, started to ask questions. But now look, there they are. They won 6 in the tournament. They're national champions, right? That's just a fun story for me to tell.
Well, you spend so much time weighing these teams against each other that I understand, our biases are our experience from working, and your experience from working has had you having to defend Auburn being number 1 in the top 25 and 1, even after a loss. When you're I'm so sorry, it's still the best resume.
I had to do it 3 different times after a loss. And buddy, your social media mentions get real messed up when you try to do that. And then again, I'll just be honest, if you're even a little bit of human, you do start to have okay, I got the whole world, or not the whole world. It's just 70 idiots, but I got 70 idiots out there calling me an idiot. I'd like to be able to turn around and call them an idiot. So go Tigers. You get a little caught up in that. You get a little caught up in that stuff sometimes. Here's what I'm trying to tell you. That's why if you go look at my bracket, CBSSports.com, it has Auburn winning the national championship. And I do believe that Auburn can win the national championship. Sure. I could see Auburn beating Duke to win the national championship. But if you told me right now, all right, GP, we ain't just playing for brackets and playing for bragging rights on a podcast, as stupid as that might be, we're putting your house on the line. You want to keep your house, you better get this right. Who's winning the national championship? I would have a hard time not saying Duke. I would be scared that if I didn't say Duke would make me homeless.
If you had to put that, if we were putting mortgages on the line, then I am very terrified that Flag and Con Knipple and Tyrese Proctor and Kamon Malawach are going to have me. Are gonna have me going around all sorts of ways of northern Mississippi looking for new real estate.
I would be, I wake up today. I got a home down south.
Are you home right now? You're back. You're still in New York City. Right?
This feels like home. I promise you, I stare out at Midtown Manhattan and the beautiful skyline way more than
you're not seeing sunrise tonight. Okay, GP?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think I'm going to get you to bed before sunrise.
I think I'm going to get to bed before sunrise tonight. But I imagine I wake up today, I got a nice home down south. I got this beautiful hotel, and then Con Knipple just ends up making me homeless in a couple of weeks. I'm just out on the streets. I don't want to live like that. Duke, this is one of those things where you're going to say something and everybody just goes, well, of course. But in the predictive metrics, it's been true for a while. Duke is performing like the best team in the country. It's matching your eyeballs now too. What they're doing to people it's not normal.
Right.
It was easy to get caught up in the ACC portion of the schedule and be like, yeah, well, they're just doing that to the ACC. It's becoming increasingly clear they would have done this in any league in the country this season against anybody. I don't know that they'd have the exact same record if they, say, played in the SEC or the Big 12, but they would still probably be the betting favorites to win the national championship. They've always had the most talented roster, and it's reasonable and has been for a little while to say they also have the best team.
I think that they got better with Cooper Flag out for the ACC tournament. Two things. Number one, Con Knippel talked about how with Cooper Flag out, he felt like the rest of the team learned more things that they could do off the ball offensively, as well as had to learn new roles and step up defensively. He talked a lot about that in some of the availability during the first and second round, about how he was like, yeah, I think that it was good for a lot of us to have to go out there. And they went, and I understand that these are ACC tournament teams that didn't make it to the round of 32, but they beat North Carolina and they beat Louisville. Those are NCAA tournament teams. They beat NCAA tournament teams without Cooper Flag in the lineup. The second thing is Cooper Flag, freshman year, got a little bit of time off. And I think that he probably could have come back earlier than the first round if he needed to. And he comes back re-energized. He comes back refocused. And I don't think tonight was his best performance of the tournament at all, but that would clearly be the Sweet 16. But I do think that to have him refreshed, recharged for the tournament run, you would never wish that your star player, national player of the year, front runner, number one pick in the NBA draft is like, what would be great is if he goes down with a minor ankle injury in the first game of the ACC tournament and he misses exactly 3 games and then he comes back and leads us to a national title. You would never, ever rub a lamp and wish that from a genie. But I do think that Duke has been benefited overall on the court, off the court, all things considered, from Cooper Flag. A little bit of a step back. I've been comparing a little bit to the LeBron spring break. How LeBron always takes a spring break right before the playoffs.
Yes.
Yeah.
He just did it.
Yeah. It's like Cooper Flag got a little bit of a LeBron spring break, and then they activated him, and he was ready to go. The Shire said all their of course it's Duke, because they've got we've got you 4.7 meters per second squared. You got all the force testing or whatever, but all of his testing numbers, they were still able to keep him in the pool. They were still able to keep him ready to go, so he didn't lose any conditioning. They did a good job, and now I agree with you. I think Duke's going to win the national championship.
So, on what you just said, I think it's spot on, and that's a real thing in basketball that isn't necessarily as true in football. Think of it this way: Kansas City Chiefs are headed toward a Super Bowl, and Patrick Mahomes has to go, is sidelined for a couple of games. He's coming back. He's sidelined for a couple of games. Well, what do you really learn while he's out? It's what do you really learn? It's just somebody else is going to play this position. We're going to play probably a little more conservatively. We're not going to get out of the pocket as much. And then eventually we're going to have Patrick Mahomes back and we're going to get back to what we were doing. But I don't really know what you gain in that. Mm-hmm. But in basketball, same thing in football, with a running back. You lose a running back, put another running back in, you run the ball. In basketball, there's a scenario where you're Duke and it's okay, what we would normally run for Cooper Flag right now, he ain't here. So now we're running this for somebody else. Instead of running this thing we would run for Cooper Flag in this situation, now we're going to run this other thing for Con Knippel. Now we're going to run this other thing for Tyrese Pro, whatever. And people can gain confidence.
Activates.
Yes, you can start to see, oh, wow, okay, he's comfortable doing that. Okay, now we got something. Not to make this about my hometown, but last year there's some real thought, and I know things aren't going well with the Grizzlies right now, but there was some real thought last year that with all of the injuries out, all the injured players out, and Jaren Jackson Jr. mostly healthy, he had to take on more of a scoring role, a playmaking role, and there's some real belief within the organization that the reason he came back this season and was more of an all-NBA level guy, made an all-star team for the second time, is because he was activated, to use your word, last season, because a lot of stuff they would run for Ja Morant or run for Desmond Bane. Well, neither one of those guys are available. All right, well, I guess we're playing through Jaren Jackson now. Well, then you realize you can do that, and it changes the dynamics of your team. I think you're right. You never want Cooper Flag out of any games, and you certainly don't want him out going forward. But can you draw something positive from his absence? Yes, and I think they probably did. Before we move on, let me ask you about Jon Scheyer. He is now in year 3, replacing a legend in Mike Krzyzewski. He has won at least 27 games every season. He's now up to 35 wins now. He has 89 in his career, which ties him with Brad Stevens and Brad Underwood for the most wins ever in the first 3 seasons of a Division I head coaching career. Obviously, that means he can now break that record, own that record next Saturday down in San Antonio. Obviously, you're familiar with the program in the state. What do you make of the job Jon Scheyer has done since replacing Kay? I know they squandered a great opportunity last season to get to the Final Four, but here he is now, in the final weekend of the season for the first time in his career at a relatively young age.
Yeah, I don't think that we can say in college basketball, and I'm more than happy to be corrected either by any of this awesome audience that's joining us live or anybody who would love to reach out at me later, but a legend retiring and then the successor is successful. We can't count Bill Guthridge coming in and leading a team to the Final Four because there just wasn't longevity, right? That was like a Dean plus when he's able to take that team that still had, Vince Carter, Anton Jameson, and everybody else. Like, I don't know if we have seen that be successful. The guy after the guy. Oh, you never want to be the guy after the guy. Well, when the guy is Mike Krzyzewski and he tells you that you're the guy, well, you take the job, you say yes, and you run with it. I think that the reason why Jon Scheyer has been successful has been, number one, the environment of college basketball. Shout out to my guy, Joe Giglio, being a year-to-year proposition, right? You like every year, like that's his buzzword. I swear his ears, he's going to hear this and he's going to like put money in a jar, but it is a year-to-year proposition. Jon Scheyer has on this team, especially, like seems to have like imprinted himself on this. Like they receive the message that he gets. Like when he sits there, it's like, I'm ready to go to war with you guys. Like I'm ready. Okay, I'm ready. This is it. This is what's going to happen. Like when he does that, they receive it. I love the fact that they don't believe that he was a good college basketball player. They don't, it blows their mind when people try to tell him, it's like, hey, Tyrese, you're actually the first Duke player since your coach right there to have 5 threes in back-to-back NCAA tournament games. He goes, can you say that again? They don't believe me that I was good. Like I love all of that, and maybe my bias is that he's around my age, right?
Yeah.
Like I graduated from North Carolina in 2009. He graduated from Duke in 2010. I'm seeing him be successful, and I'm seeing him sort of like have fun with his guys, with his team. He's fully separated from the transition. The roster has been rebooted. This is his squad. He is on the verge of making college basketball history in being the guy after the guy and being successful. And if Duke wins the national championship, like you and I both seem to think is very much in the cards as they go to the Final Four, then he would very much be making college basketball history for being able to win a national championship after succeeding one of the greatest coaches in the sports history.
I've known Jon for a long time, covered him as a player, knew him as an assistant coach. He was always struck me as a smart guy, like just a sharp guy, but he's also like shown himself to be an incredibly smart coach in the way that he runs his program. There's a lot of thought behind everything he does. And there was a really good story in the Athletic / New York Times a few weeks ago about the emphasis and the deliberate nature with which he built this roster, specifically around Cooper Flagg and with length in mind. When Jeremy Roach, I guess, gets into the transfer portal and you realize that he wasn't running from Duke as much as he was kind of told, you might need to find another place to go. It might just be in everybody's best interest to split up here. There's never one reason for anything, but it should be noted that Jeremy Roach is 6'2". He's a smaller guy. As we talked about earlier, Duke is starting, at the 1, 2, 3, 6'6", 6'6", 6'7", and as the article illustrated, this is something Brad Stevens, who has sort of become a coaching confidant for John. This is something Brad Stevens emphasized to John. Like, you'll never hate having length at every position.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the Celtics, Jason Tatum's a big guard. Jaylen Brown's a big guard. And, Duke is, in terms of average height, the tallest team in the country. And what I like about all this is that it was just very intentional. I remember the Zion Williamson Duke team, and I just remember in real time thinking, how can you recruit Zion Williamson and then not recruit shooters to just have all over the court? Like, how do you get Zion? Like, I'm not saying you don't take RJ Barrett if you have Zion Williamson or vice
or
versa.
Cam Reddish.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I understand, but like, it just seemed clear to me, instead of going out and getting all the 5-star prospects you could, pass on one of them maybe and get somebody who fits a need, a very specific need as a college basketball player perfectly. And I never felt that they did that well with that roster, even though that roster was clearly good enough to win a national championship, just got knocked off in the Elite Eight. But I do like that, years later, as John is now running the program, it's obvious that he didn't just go out and recruit the best players he could recruit, the most talented players he could recruit. Yes, he got 3 lottery picks, but after he got the 3 lottery picks, he really, what goes best with them? Specifically, what goes best with Cooper Flagg? And he's clearly built it. I don't know about perfectly, but it's pretty close. It's pretty close. And now it's, at this point, again, according to the betting markets, it will be anything other than Duke winning 2 more games and cutting nets will be a surprise.
Yeah, I asked him about it. He said that we were looking for guys who weren't going to be about shots and weren't going to be about points. We needed to get guys who understood the fit. And so when you're talking about Sion James, that was somebody who arrived from Tulane, not Tulane, from Tulane. Yeah, we're talking about somebody who arrived from Tulane and knew who's who, what's what my role is. Okay, let's go. And all the pieces that were put around all came in with a very clear understanding. And I think that's, again, a credit to Shire in his communication, with everybody as he put this roster together. It's not just about talent. It's about personality fit. It's about understanding. And that's at the very, very, very highest levels of the sport. If you don't want to rely on bracket luck, if you don't want to, if you want to say, I don't care who you put in front of us, we're ready to go win. That's what you got to be able to do. Very, very few college basketball programs can do it. Shire's Duke program is right now.
So now the Blue Devils advance to San Antonio. They will play the winner of Sunday's Houston-Tennessee game next Saturday in the Final Four. The Blue Devils now just 2 more wins away from what would be their 6th national championship. We'll turn our attention to Florida, Texas Tech next. That was obviously the better game. But first, let's get a word from our partners.
One of golf's elite courses, Quail Hollow, hosts the game's top players at the PGA Championship this May on CBS.
Final score, Florida 84, Texas Tech 79. The Gators are in the Final Four for the first time since 2014. Wild game out in San Francisco. Texas Tech was up 75-66 with 2:51 left. From there, Florida outscored the Red Raiders 18-4 the rest of the way, won the game by 5. Chip, I saw Nada on the Eye on College Basketball Twitter account asked the following question, something along the lines of, did Florida come back and take this game, or did Texas Tech give it away? How would you answer that question?
Florida took it. I think it is what they are doing right now. To which I need to ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know why we use the term nut cutting time?
There's a few of these little phrases that you know what it's supposed to mean, but you don't know why it means that.
Right.
I'll give you a nut. No, I don't know what nut cutting time means exactly, except I know what it means. I know what you mean when you say it, but why do we use that phrase? It's nut cutting time. I don't know why.
So
here's another one. Here's another one. You ready for this one?
Yeah.
You hear this all the time. All the time. I don't know why it's said. Why is this a thing? And that's 3 threes in a row. He has ice water in his veins. What does that mean?
Shouldn't you want warm blood?
I want warm blood in my veins.
Forget ice water in my veins.
I feel like if you
warm
got
blood.
Yeah, I think anything other than warm blood in your veins is a bad problem. A bad problem. So what does that mean? Why do people say it?
So my research into this, nut cutting could be two things. Number one, the idea that you need to gather your nuts together before predators or the winter comes. So it's like urgency, right? Like now it's time, the money's on the table. Or number two, if things have gotten so bad in mechanics that a nut needs to be cut because no pliers, no wrenches or anything can get it off. It's been so corroded by rust. It has to be cut. This is the last ditch effort. We got to get it done. And here's why I bring that up, because I was talking to Todd Golden after the Florida UConn game, right? And I'm asking the question. I'm like, hey, you talked yesterday about how you were expecting that this UConn team did not view themselves as underdogs, that they had won all these games in a row. You were expecting that they were going to bring a certain championship pedigree. The performance out there from the Huskies, did that meet your expectations, exceed it, this, that, or the other? And Todd goes into, I think it was what we expected, blah, blah, blah. They've won all these games. He gives a shout out to Caravan, Hassan Diarra, and everything else. But then he says, but credit to our players because it was kind of He goes, but credit to our players because it was kind of nut cutting time. They stepped up and they made big plays. I think it was more about our guys stepping up and winning than UConn not pushing through. Our guys stepped up and made the plays to help us win the game. So nut cutting time has been in my head from Todd Golden ever since that UConn game. 8-0 run, right? Wasn't that it? Like the 8-0 run that closed out and again, Dan Hurley talks about the Caravan, no call, this, that, or the other. But Florida, and specifically Walter Clayton, seem to have that nut cutting time gene, that clutch gene. That money is on the table and we are going to go get it because it is just not smart shots. They are contested fall away 3-pointers that just seem to just fall into the basket. I was writing Florida's obituary in this game. And to your point about, did Texas Tech catch the Arkansas flu? A little bit. They missed the front end of 2 1-and-1s coming down the stretch. There is a little bit of that, but it doesn't happen. The 18-4 run does not happen if Florida does not also come up with those big shots, specifically the ones from Walter Clayton, who finishes with 30 points. So my answer is that Florida won it. Was the door left open by Texas Tech? Yes, but the Gators had to walk through it. And it reminds me of kind of the way that they have handled business in the last 3 tournament games.
They really might be the best nut cutting time team in the country. Now,
yes.
Duke never has to cut nuts. Duke doesn't really have to cut nuts. They're in a good position. They're never really in a nut cutting time. Florida has found itself, in some nut cutting situations and handled them well lately. I like the way you answered that question. I didn't know if you would answer it that way because I don't think my instincts are to answer it that way. Just sort of blindly. I think if you're up 9 with 2:51 left, you should win that game.
Mm-hmm.
Period. And if you don't, it is usually because you gave it away. It is almost always going to be because you gave it away. Think of it this way. Florida scored 84 in the game, right? That's 2.1 points per game, something like that, I think. 2.1 points per minute, rather. So if Texas Tech just holds Florida to that average per minute for the final 2:51, Florida can't even catch them if they never score again. Now, I know there's a different sense of urgency in the final 2:51 when you're down 9, so this isn't quite apples to apples, but you get the point. All that said, as you're watching it, and then you go back to confirm what you think you saw, the turnovers that are usually there in a collapse like this, they're just not there.
No,
they didn't give the ball away. They had 1 turnover in the final 2:51, but do you know when it was? With 3 seconds left after the game was already decided.
And look, Darion Williams has a shot to tie the game that with 16 seconds left or somewhere around there. If that shot falls, we don't talk about a collapse. it felt more like Florida walking again, door was open, but
Right.
it felt more like it was about Florida walking through the door.
I agree. Like that's a clean look from three. It's the type of look he knocked down 2 nights ago. If he knocks that one down here, perhaps there's a different deal. The front ends of 2 1-1s in the final 251, you leave in points. Yes. But the most significant part of what happened was that Florida went from 66 points to 78 points in 111 seconds.
I love the way you put that.
They went from 66 to 78 in 111 seconds. They got 3-pointers on 4 straight possessions, 12-2 run in 111 seconds, flipped the game. Texas Tech was up 75-66 with 2:51 left. Then 111 seconds later, Texas Tech was down 78-77, and they never had the lead or even tied the game again. I agree with you. I think Florida mostly just took it. Make a free throw here, make a free throw there, make that wide open three. There were things Texas Tech could have done, but those are kind of normal basketball things. When I usually associate a late game collapse with blaming the collapser, it's like, and Buddy stepped on the line, turnover over here. Buddy threw it into the crowd, turnover there. Missed a layup, oh no. It wasn't really that. It was Walter Clayton and his teammates just.
It was nut cutting time.
It was nut cutting time, and they got to doing what they do in nut cutting time. It's the best nut cutting time team in the country, and they showed it again on Saturday night. Walter Clayton, let's put some numbers on it. 7 of 14 from the field, 3 of 8 from 3, 13 of 14 for the free throw line. Game high 30 points. He had 8 points and 2 assists in the final 250. So he outscored Texas Tech by himself in that final 250 stretch of the game. The free throw line was another real strength for Florida. They were 25 of 27 from the free throw line. Texas Tech just 7 of 13. So the Gators had an 18-point advantage at the free throw line and win the game by 5. Broadly speaking, you watch Florida have that type of performance. We've known I've been saying this for a few days now. Auburn's the number 1 overall seed in this tournament. Auburn's the outright SEC champs. But if you wanted to make a case that Auburn's not even the best SEC team left in the bracket, there's some data to support that, and you would point to Florida. They looked the part. I don't want to have revisionist history. If you'd have told me on opening day of the season to name, say, 10 teams I thought could win this national championship, I don't know that I would have gotten to Florida. But throughout the season, even though they weren't getting a lot of big signature wins early, and that's why they kind of stayed off of the national radar for a little while, it became increasingly clear as the SEC schedule unfolded, oh no, this is top tier in the country type of team. And undeniably, that's what they are right now. And, not every team that wins a national championship has to, turn a loss into a win and, get a lucky bounce here or there. UConn really didn't last season. They just ran through everybody. But throughout history, there are times when this team couldn't have cut nets if they wouldn't have had this really special moment in the round of 32 or Sweet 16 or Elite 8 or whatever. And tonight could be that for Florida. If we end up talking about a Florida national championship, we'll point back to March 29th, 2025, the night they were on the ropes against a good Texas Tech team and somehow came back and got the win.
I think they are learning how to handle success. I think that because they were off the radar, because they weren't Auburn, or because they weren't Alabama or Tennessee, or because they've slowly risen up into that sort of consciousness, I think that they're learning how to deal with expectations. And I say that because the Sweet 16 and the Elite 8 starts, the game against Maryland and the game against Texas Tech, it didn't look great. I mean, it wasn't awesome starts, right? They weren't just coming out throwing haymakers. They're a 1 seed, and they are, according to the betting markets, I think right behind Duke in terms of being favorites to win the national championship. But it is a slow to warm type dominance that it sometimes takes with the Gators. I mean, sure. Well, look, you did it against Norfolk State. Congratulations. But every other game in this tournament has been a little bit of like, okay, we need to get into the battle. Okay, we need to start seeing which one of our bigs is going to get in foul trouble and which one of our bigs is going to step up. It takes a little bit for them to get into it. And I think that was significant because Florida, by their own admission, was like, look, we hadn't had this kind of attention until we won the SEC tournament. And then all of a sudden on Selection Sunday, and this is Todd Golden saying this, everyone at ESPN's experts is picking Florida to win the national championship. Like we are still sort of coming around to this. And I think that's what I consider in terms of the soft factors and the vibes with some of these big games. It's Sweet 16, it's Elite 8, and you're everything's going on, and you've just been in this for so long that it is a team that almost needs to bleed a little bit. And then you start to see that championship medal. So yeah, I think that Florida, from a personnel standpoint, is built like the kind of team that can win 6 games in the NCAA tournament. 2 examples here. Number one, I saw John Henson was up in studio with y'all, right?
Not tonight, but he has been
a long time. It was like, so
like a couple weeks ago. He was great. I love John.
I was with him in conference tournament week in Fort Lauderdale. Great. I think John's awesome. I think John is very, he's got a good future. I'm pouring gas in his tank. I hope that he continues to do more work with us because I enjoyed it. He came with us in the sweat cave. I don't know if you saw that. We had a 2-hour live stream on 2 different days. Sweat and conference tournament bets. He came in, put on a headband, was talking about doing live bets on shit stuff. It was great. But John and I were sitting there talking, and we're like, you know what Florida looks like? Looks like one of those old North Carolina teams. You got these veteran guards. You got all these bigs. Like this looks like one of those Roy Williams teams that cuts down nets. Second example. Dan Hurley saying, you know what Florida looks like? Florida looks like one of our UConn teams. Florida looks like when you got Adama and Donovan and Sampson and Tristan Newton and and Cam Spencer. And, it's just, you start to look and it's like, okay, well, if this team profiles like these 05-09 North Carolina and 23-24 UConn. Well, okay, what's the common thread here? They all cut down nets. Florida's built to be able to win this national championship. Now, there are other teams that could stop them from doing that, but I'm glad that they are in the Final Four because I've felt since the beginning of this tournament, since conference tournament week, that they are at least constructed the way that they can contend for a national championship.
All right, couple more things for you real quick, and your answers will more or less have to be predictions. Here's the question. We've already got 2 number 1 seeds into the Final Four. Are we going to have all 4 number 1 seeds at the Final Four in San Antonio?
No. You want to know why?
Why?
Because the Vols ain't losing in Peyton's house.
The Vols won't lose in Peyton's house.
Listen, you got to walk by a statue of Peyton Manning to get into that stadium. I've been in that. So we had Big Ten Media Days, Big Ten Championship game. I've been in Indy. All right. I've been all over Indy over here in the last 8-9 months or so. Very aware of the Peyton vibes, and they've got him there too. No. Vols ain't losing in Peyton's house.
Okay. Next question. We already have 1 SEC team into the Final Four. It sounds like you think we're at least going to have 2. Do you believe we're going to get 3?
I could see it. I will say that if my expert picks prediction is that Tom Izzo and Michigan State get it done, but I truly believe that all things considered, Auburn, Michigan State is a coin flip type game. What about you?
I know Auburn is favored by 4.5. If I were playing the game, I would probably take the points, but keep in mind my expert picks are below 500, so you shouldn't pay attention to them. But I like Michigan State has been playing better lately than Auburn has been playing lately, but for a 4+ month season to date, Auburn has been the better team. I think we're going to end up with all 4 number 1 seeds. I think it's going to be Houston, Auburn joining Duke and Florida, and all 4 number 1 seeds in San Antonio. But I mean, I think obviously both these games could go either way. I'll go Houston and Auburn, but you could tell me any combination of outcomes, and I'd be like, yeah, I could see that.
You talk about taking the points. Here's a fun angle here. So Michigan State and Auburn both have been slow starting teams. They have been teams where you take their opponent on the first half spread, right? Because their opponent is going to be like +2, +3.5, +4 on the first half spread, sitting on like a 4, 5, 5.5, 6.5, 7.5 type spread. So what happens when two slow starting teams play each other? Oh no! Spider-Man pointing meme. I don't know what to do here. I don't know. And like the way that I know that when Kentucky goes to Atlanta, we call it Catlanta. Tigers, it's technically Catlanta because a tiger is a cat, but I've been calling it the Jungle East is the way I've been calling it. When Pettiford was popping off last night and that place was roaring, I was like, oh God, I think Auburn's going to be real tough to beat. I think Auburn's going to be tougher to beat in Atlanta than Houston will be, especially after Purdue played that Houston defense about as well as anybody. And I got to think that after getting good performances out of all three of your senior backcourt of Zakai Ziegler and Chaz Lanier and Jordan Gainey, that they've got to be looking at that like, okay, like we've got more options than Purdue has. Purdue has a 2-man game that's phenomenal, and they still did almost enough to win that game. I've got to think Tennessee looks at that tape on the quick scout and thinks we've got a chance to get to the Final Four for the first time in program history.
And it would be an awesome story. Like Tennessee has been ranked number 1 in the country under multiple coaches, Bruce Pearl and Rick Barnes. That program is in recent years one of the biggest consistent winners in the sport. They've accomplished tons of stuff, had NBA players come through there, Hall of Fame level coaches come through there, but nobody's ever actually taken that program to the Final Four. And Rick has, one more win to become the first man to ever do that. If he gets it, it'd obviously be a and that's no shout
out. Look, I love Kelvin. Lumberton, North Carolina's own Kelvin Sampson, right? Forever, I am Team Kelvin. I know you're Team Kelvin. I'm Team Kelvin Sampson there too. There's no losers there with 2 North Carolina natives competing in the Midwest Regional Final on my end in terms of my own biases and emotions.
Yeah, I know all these guys, for a while now, and I genuinely, I say this as sincerely as I can say it. I don't mind seeing any of them do well. I root for people. I don't root against folks. I root for people. I'm happy for people all the time.
Same.
And so I'd be, whatever. I will let this play out, and I'll just keep talking about it until it's over. But I think this sentiment is pretty common throughout college basketball. Whether you talk about other coaches, people who follow the sport, I think people like Kelvin Sampson. And he's got this NCAA stuff, a million years ago in his past that is obviously minor relative to other things that have happened. And I guess some people still weirdly hold on to that to use it as a weapon against him.
You know where that wasn't held against anybody? I was at the Will Wade press conference this past week. I tell you what, I did not hear one bit of sentiment being held against that man in Reynolds Coliseum on Tuesday.
Okay, well then maybe we're moving away from the nonsense.
I think we're moving away.
I guess that's what I'm saying.
Are you kidding me? Yeah, no way.
There would be a lot of people, maybe this is the simplest way to put it. There'd be a lot of people who smiled if they could watch Kelvin Sampson climb a ladder and cut nets and be a national champion.
Yeah.
Like there would be a lot of people who would be like, that's a cool thing to see. His story is a pretty remarkable story. So it's just it'll be a fabulous doubleheader on Sunday and network of stars. But official prediction right now, I think Auburn wins in part because of the location of the game. If you played this game in Detroit tomorrow, I'd probably pick Michigan State.
Oh, but we're gonna play. They got thumped by the Tar Heels in 2009. In Detroit. Tom Izzo tried to say it would fix the water crisis if the Michigan State won. And I'm so sorry about that. But Tyler Hansbrough had other plans.
I actually remember, Tom, before that game, like you're heading in the national championship game, and he had this whole, it was almost like a locker room speech queued up for press availability. And it was this long thing. At least this is the way I remember it. Keep in mind, it was, 16 years ago.
Yeah.
But I remember some version of this. He was like, listen, playing North Carolina, they're better than us. They just are, right? They got better players. They have a better coach. They're better than us. But we're pretty good at making teams not play as well as they normally play. And so if we can play as well as we can play, and then maybe make it where they don't play as well as they normally play, then maybe we can, figure out a way to get this thing done. And then it's like, fast forward to the game. You're down $1 million. Yeah. And it was, I just remember he was like trying to talk himself into it, but seemingly deep down knowing, oh buddy, we're up against this team. This is going to be tough. I'll tell you this, Auburn and Atlanta, much more manageable. In my head, I think under these circumstances than North Carolina was, on that night back in 2009. But as always, we'll see. Prediction, Auburn wins in part because the game's played in Atlanta, and Kelvin Sampson wins a close game against Tennessee. And our Final Four is a 1 seed against a 1 seed and a 1 seed against a 1 seed.
Let's go. I mean,
let's go.
Yeah, let's go. I'll take it. I've got both twos advancing. I did favorites today, dogs tomorrow. So let's see if the dogs are barking on Sunday.
All right, let's get out of here. Chip, thank you for being here. I owe you. I don't know how many friends I got that would stay up this late with me on a Saturday night, but I appreciate you being here. Shouts to Devin Downey. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Terry Teagle, he's a legend. Huck, Larnell, thank you guys once again for watching, listening to the Eye on College Basketball Podcast. If you're not subscribed, please go subscribe anywhere you subscribe to podcasts. Apple, Spotify. There's more of us than there are of them. That's got to be reflected in the comments. So do that, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Till then, take care.